Welcome to Photography Isn't Dead. This is a series of live events by Happy Finish. This one's all about using HDRIs in photography when you're placing computer-generated objects into your photographic stills. We believe that photographers are going to evolve and integrate CG into their workflow rather than be consumed by it. And CG creates opportunities for you to save your clients time and money. Content creators have always learned to exploit seismic shifts in technology to their advantage. And as successful commercial photographers, you are already more than just photographers. I would more accurately call you image makers. Obviously, HDRI stands for High Dynamic Range Image. And talking about dynamic range is the difference between the lightest and darkest parts of an image. Within a real scene, you've got every intensity level from direct sunlight to heavy shadows, and high dynamic range imaging will maintain detail in all of these areas. High dynamic range images are generally achieved by capturing multiple exposures using exposure bracketing and then merging them into an HDR image using specialist software programs such as HDR Shop, and the one we use is PT GUI. They're fairly cheap and inexpensive programs which help stitch the images together to make your HDR image. A spherical panoramic HDRI is the image as it's reflected in its entirety all the way around the sphere, including the top and the bottom. So you can actually unwrap those images and show them flat, a bit like you unwrap a map of the world and show it flat on the wall. What we do with CGI is we capture from the inside of that sphere, and there's various ways of doing it. We capture the natural ambient lighting in the scene, and we also capture it in the same image with lighting that you've put into the scene as well, your artificial lighting. This helps us to composite CG objects into a photographic backplate. So, for example, it helps us to light CG objects to get those really subtle shadows and lighting, and also reflected directional lighting from other large objects in the scene. What the CG rendering process does is it puts this object inside this spherical HDRI, and it looks outwards at the HDRI, and it calculates what reflections you would actually see in that object, obviously from a given camera position, which is the same camera position as where you shot your backplate. The car photographer whose creative concept it was, and who art directed the whole production of the image, is Trigger.
Hi, I'm Trigger, photographer on this. We're shooting backplates for a CGI test for Happy Finish here at the Shoreditch Town Hall. On this, we're shooting on a Hasselblad. We're going to be producing a Porsche, the new 5-door Porsche, to go into.
Can you just barn it off of the lens just a little bit, please? Yeah. You got it.
At the moment, we're lighting the backplates. As you can see, we're backlighting them, and we're painting with light, so the exposure is 6 seconds. We're moving the lights from left to right to give it a nice, soft, backlit feel. And then after that, it'll go into retouch, and off you go. That's how the magic works. Okay, mate? Then I might need you just to kill that. So just stay there.
So he came up with an idea of shooting the Porsche Panamera. Sort of our brief in terms of a project for scouting the location was to find a location where you couldn't put a Porsche Panamera. This is the main backplate that he shot. Once you've decided on your location, you have to source the wireframe model of the car, get the CAD data from the manufacturer, strip out the engineering data, and then you have a perfect wireframe model of the actual object you're trying to create. When you're shooting for CG, you don't have to shoot differently. There are extra things you have to do on the shoot, but it doesn't impinge your normal working process of how you shoot. These are one of the additional things you have to do. You have to shoot a reference object in a position where the car is going to be placed in the shot. We actually use a 1 meter square cube, which is collapsible. It allows the CG artist to align the car and get the scale of the car correctly when they place it into the shot. This is obviously done with the camera position locked off.
There are many ways to shoot HDRI images. We use the segmental method. We shot our HDRI like segments of a chocolate egg, I suppose. And each segment is made up of a bracket of 9 exposures. So our correct exposure in the middle, and then it goes very dark to very light. And we're going to stitch it all together in a software program. And each segment is going to be a series of 9 images, which is your bracket, which is compressed into HDRI. The software program does a clever thing. It blends it all together for you, and you have a spherical 360-degree HDRI. So the basic premises of the segmental method is a sturdy tripod. The other key piece is what's called a nodal head. The basic principle of it is, I suppose, it rotates the nodal point of the camera lens around the node of the camera. So when you take your panorama, everything lines up, all your verticals, everything, and you move it up, and it all lines up, it's all around that nodal point. Okay. So that's a key bit of equipment for taking 360-degree panoramas. The next thing is a lens with a wide field of view. This is a 15mm fisheye. I think it's got about 140 degree. And digital camera. This is a Canon D5. This 15mm lens needs 6 segments with a 25% overlap to stitch together. And then you do one on the ceiling and one on the floor as well. Cable release, because you want to keep your camera still. You're probably going to be using long shutter speeds. We're going to fix everything because we're doing brackets. So we're going to fix our ISO, so when that doesn't change or move around. We fix our aperture, because aperture affects your depth of field and your focus. You have it on manual focus as well, because you don't want your focus to change again. And we fix the white point balance as well. Most of you might have it on auto white balance. If you're shooting outside, one of the things to think about is if you've got the sun, put your sun in the middle, line it up with the middle, because you're going to get less flare than if you start and it's in the side, right? At the beginning of our, so we've got 4 seconds, 8 seconds, 15 seconds, 30th, 60th, 125, 250, 500, 1,000. So that's one bracket of 9 shots. You move the tripod, and off you go again. Okay. So this is about as fast as you can do it. So you need to account for a bit of time. One for the ceiling, and then mark a point on the floor, then I'd flip it over and shoot a bracket for the floor as well. So I've got everything all together, and I can now move to my stitching software and stitch it all together. One last thing is I'd say shoot as quickly as possible. So don't go out in the field and do it straight away. Do a bit of practice, so when you go and do it, you can do it quick, you know what you're doing, because you're shooting brackets, and if people, well, cars move, clouds move, the sun moves a little bit, so you don't want to get too much ghosting to deal with. So if you shoot quick, you can eliminate all that sort of thing.
You've shot your backplate as normal, you've shot your cube, you shoot your HDRI, and then you just have to take some measurements, and then that's it, you're done. First of all, you take camera position, height, and angle. So the height of the lens off the ground, the angle of the lens towards the ground, which can be read straight off the tripod head, and then some distances. Now, when we talk about distances, we're talking about measuring some distances to sort of key features in the shot. This just allows the CG artist a little bit more information about how to place the CG object into the shot, what scale to use, etc. So, for example, here at Shoreditch Town Hall, we measured the distance from the camera to the cube. We measured the distance from the camera to the front of the stage. We measured the distance from the stage to the back wall, and we measured a couple of the door heights. That's enough. You know, as long as you have measured some key distances, key things in the frame. Obviously, back wall was a big one for us. Now, the last thing that you have to make sure you have is the metadata from the shot. So in other words, that will give the CG artist the camera lens and model type, sensor type, etc. At the end of the day, CG is just another tool in the armory that you have. Each case of whether you're going to use it or not needs to be judged against the other options you have. Using HDRIs makes CG elements easier to create, and the results a hell of a lot better. That ends the shoot. Thank you very much for coming. So the next two events are at Blossom Street Studios, is the next one, and the one after at the Village Underground, just down the road.